years to come, if not forever. I'm joined now by the man who put the original Sky Marshal program together, the former Director of Law Enforcement for the U.S. Treasury Department, Martin Paulner. Martin, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
The Sky Marshals, are they part of the answers here?
Yes, they are.
And who should pay for them?
I think the government should pay for it as they had in the 1970s.
Do you find it incredible that this many terrorists were able to board this many aircraft and hijack them and send them as weapons into these targets?
Absolutely.
How could this happen?
Part of the problem has to do with the X-ray system at the terminals, which I also suggest be taken over by the federal government and not have these minimum wage people working on it.
Many people don't realize that those minimum wage employees standing there at the scanners and looking at the X-ray machines, those are minimum wage people, whereas in most countries, certainly in Europe, these are highly paid professionals, if not government employees.
Absolutely. Switzerland, Israel, many other countries have government employees there. It's an absolute shame that we don't have it, and we should have it immediately.
Is there any way, in your judgment, however, that we could raise the level of probability against this happening to such a high level that we would be absolutely comfortable?
Not absolutely comfortable, but I do think with the Sky Marshal program in selected flights, passengers would know it, hijackers would not want to get on those flights. They don't know which.
Should we arm pilots?
I think they could. Most of them are Vietnam vets. They know how to use it. I think that could be done. I also think that the cockpit door should be stronger.
And are there inventive measures put into the aircraft to help the crew and passengers protect themselves from hijackers, terrorists?
Absolutely. There should be television cameras in the cockpit so he can see what's happening behind him in the cabin.
And the truth is, when we're talking about tens of millions of dollars for these aircraft, we're really talking about an expense that's really only at the margin.
Exactly.
Airport security itself. We see Reagan Airport in Washington now closed down. A number of airports closed down around the country. What happens from here? Are we going to see that change substantially as well?
No, I think they're being closed down for security reasons, which I'd rather not discuss specifically. Reagan, however, is another question. They're debating within the government whether to ever open it because of the problem of it being so close to the White House and other places.
And the Pentagon
And
specifically.
the Pentagon.
Well, that's, and there is an actual discussion, debate, as to whether or not it would ever reopen?
Yes, and that's the reason why it's not open right now. It's the last one to open.
That, of course, would have tremendous impact, the most convenient airport, and also the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars invested there. Martin Paulner, it's great to have you with us. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And as we turn to the terrorist attacks that are leading to heightened airport security, the industry itself is not only being disrupted by those terrorist attacks, mail and also packages are late, they are missing. There is, in point of fact, in some quarters, simply chaos in the transportation system. Fred Katayama has that story and its impact on business.
Passenger planes have resumed flying from the vast majority of airports, but they're still prohibited from carrying mail or cargo for security reasons. So that check in the mail will take even longer to get there. The terrorist attack shut down commercial air traffic for 2 days. 20% of domestic mail travels by air, and nearly $5 billion in checks are sent daily.
People can anticipate that mail will be 1, 2, as many as 3 days later than normal because of the fact that we've taken mail off of trucks, off of planes, and put it on trucks.
Some of the world's biggest manufacturers are also feeling the sting. Tightened security at checkpoints along the Canadian border has delayed the delivery of car parts, causing General Motors and Honda to shut down some of their plants the last few days. Ford will extend its shutdown this week and warn third-quarter earnings will fall short of forecasts. The most affected were express delivery carriers, but UPS has cleared its backlog. It and Federal Express say domestic operations have returned to normal levels and they'll reinstate their money-back guarantees Monday. But one analyst warns they could face more turbulence should the U.S. strike back militarily.
As we grow into what's going to be the new environment that we all live in, it's not going to happen smoothly. So I think there will be some disruptions there.
On the bright side, one sector may have gotten a temporary lift from the flight ban, trucking firms. They move roughly 2/3 of the nation's cargo. Lou?
Well, as you know, the vice president now saying it's a possibility that we're in recession, and these kinds of effects certainly are not helpful in removing that possibility. Fred, thanks very much. Well, Dick Cheney, the vice president, appeared on NBC's Meet the Press this morning to address a number of issues, but amongst them, the strength of this economy. He acknowledged, as I said, that quite possibly we are in recession. But the vice president, and indeed the Bush administration, they believe that this economy will quickly rebound. Tim O'Brien has more.
Lou, whatever happens on Wall Street tomorrow, the SEC announced late today that the system is, quote, sound and operational. Still, to help public companies support the price of their own stock, the SEC, using new emergency powers for the first time, has waived some of the rules. For example, to prevent publicly held companies from unfairly manipulating their own stock price, they're ordinarily not allowed to trade in their own shares during the first and last half hour of trading, nor are they allowed to participate in more than 25% of their stock's trading volume on any given day. But at the opening bell tomorrow, public companies will be allowed to repurchase their own securities without meeting volume and timing restrictions. There will be no adverse accounting consequences arising out of such buyback plans. Brokerage firms will be allowed to calculate net capital without considering the days the market was closed, and mutual funds may borrow from and lend to related parties, giving them added sources of liquidity. Investors and others can get more information on the SEC's website, www.sec.gov. By the way, Alan Greenspan and the Fed will be getting considerable attention in upcoming days as well. Even before September 11, there was speculation the Fed might again lower interest rates at its next meeting, October 2nd, and possibly even before then. Although normal market fluctuations don't usually lead to rate cuts, this situation is, of course, far from normal. Another rate cut is possible at any time, perhaps, Lou, as early as tomorrow.
Tim, thank you very much. Tim O'Brien from Washington tonight. Well, as you might suspect, this tragedy, this act of war has prompted our viewers from all around the world to share their thoughts with us, to write us, and to email us. Those messages filled with their prayers, their sorrow, and their anger. Ernest Machacheo of Bolivia writes, "If the American consumer expresses his or her faith through purchasing power, then all the mightiness of America will be even more unreachable to the destructive forces of envy. God bless America." Ellen Shaw writes, "I, for one, will not let fanatic thugs disrupt my country or my future. We will show the world we are the world leaders. I intend to hold my equity positions through any turmoil and hope that other investors, large and small, do the same." William Golden writes to say, "One of the attacks was on our financial system. It was clear that the target in New York was for this purpose. I encourage people who have money on the sidelines to invest now and show the world we cannot be intimidated. Also, shoppers should return to normal and make purchases, as there is no fundamental change in our economy." And as our Gallup poll, by the way, shows tonight, actually there might be some improvement. Anything less than this is totally assisting the terrorists. And some very strong words from viewer David Green. David Green writes to say, "Regardless of what happens when the U.S. markets reopen, I am not going to sell. I'm going to buy. I'll be damned if I'll give those expletive bastards the satisfaction that they put any fear or panic in my portfolio. Now, excuse me while I go out and buy a new car." And that is representative of the thoughts that we're hearing from our viewers. And we have just received word from Reuters that Warren Buffett has announced that tomorrow he will not sell a single share of stock. And in fact, if the market does move down, Warren Buffett says he'll be a buyer. That's this special edition of Moneyline. We thank you for being with us. I'm Lou Dobbs. Good night from New York.
I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington.
And I'm Joey Chen at CNN Center in Atlanta.
First, I want to clarify the latest reports we have on arrest warrants being issued. We have now heard that 4 additional arrest warrants have been issued, unclear for whom. We do know that there are 2 individuals who have been taken in custody, detained as material witnesses. Once again, 2 others still remain at large. A total of 4 arrest warrants having been issued by the U.S. Justice Department. We'll have more on that at the top of the hour. Joey?
Well, certainly, and CNN viewers can expect to get the latest information from us on our air at any time. September 11th's tragedy is forever etched in all of our minds. The images of the World Trade Center towers crumbling away into history. But there is a backstory about the buildings themselves and the symbols they were even before Tuesday's tragedies. Author Eric Darton has written about the World Trade Center, the buildings, their architecture itself, and he joins us now from New York. Mr. Darton, has the World Trade Center towers, that architecture, always been embraced by New Yorkers as really part of their landscape?
Well, not from the beginning. The Trade Center, when it was first built, was almost like this implant on the city. But
because they were so big, because they were just such an intrusion on the landscape?
Well, if you look at the Midtown skyscrapers, for instance, the Empire State, it's almost as though there are foothills leading up to a mountain range. And the Trade Center stood right at the edge of the Hudson River, and even the Battery Park City development built on it had to sign a covenant that its buildings would be no higher than half of the height of the Trade Center. So the actual anomaly of the Trade Center was written into the planning.
Well, but after 1993, after the first World Trade Center attack, that did change.
Oh, absolutely. I think that for New Yorkers in particular, there was a sense that these towers had come to, in some way, be emblems of our resilience. Absolutely.
You have written that there is something of a parallel, at least in sort of the thinking of the builders behind the World Trade Center project, and in fact the terrorists themselves, and I wonder if you can explain that to our viewers.
I wouldn't necessarily call it so much a parallel as I would point to a kind of similarity of modality of thinking. In order to build the World Trade Center, which was a gigantic structure, it was 10 million square feet on 16 acres of land with 40,000 people sucked every day up into it. In order to imagine such a structure and to actually plan and engineer and build it, one had to reduce the individual human lives in it to nothing. There's a level of abstraction that goes into that kind of thinking that I believe is paralleled by a kind of thinking that would look at this emblem and not see people in it, but just see an emblem. In this case, an emblem to be destroyed.
You, as somebody who knew the World Trade Center so thoroughly, from the bricks and mortar of it all the way up, I guess, you do say, though, that this was a pair of buildings that aroused tremendous passion for those who had an opportunity to stand at the top of it and view all of New York.
Oh, there was nothing like it. My 9-year-old daughter, one of her first thoughts that she expressed to me was her thankfulness that we'd been able to go up on top and see this incredible panorama from the top. There was nothing like it. If you were in a plane, you're airborne, but we were standing on top of a human-made monument. The problem is confusing our sculptural monuments with office buildings where human people have to live. That's a real problem, and we should never go there again.
Well, I have to ask you this then before we go, and it just have to be a quick answer. Do you expect that there will be a rebuilding of the Trade Center towers?
I don't honestly know. There would be tremendous social and political pressure to build something there. It's almost as though there's been an amputation of a limb, and we want to see something replace it. My view is that the World Trade Center's building coincided with the loss of the maritime culture, the river economy, the bay, the great port that the World Trade Center displaced. So that if we build anything there, I feel somehow that it should be a link to the maritime culture, to the waterborne culture that sustained New York from the very beginning.